Hi, everyone. Now let's consider the following questions about dice totals or sums. Try to answer the following questions. What are the least likely totals or sums on the two dice? I should say possible. What are the two least likely possible totals or sums on the two dice? Yes, the probability of getting a sum of zero is zero. That's true. But what are the least likely possible totals or sums on the two dice? Also, what are the, or what is the, what is the most likely total or sum on the two dice? So what are the least likely possible sums? What is the most likely sum? Regarding the most likely, and by the way, follow-up questions, what are their probabilities? What are their probabilities? While we're at it, what's the probability that the total or sum on the two dice is a 5? Find the probability that the total or sum of the two dice is, let's say, 5. And by the way, what are the possible sums? A little hint here. What are the possible sums? The integers from 2 through 12. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. I'll give you a minute to think about these 4 questions. And I'll give you a hint. Try to focus on this grid here, this two-dimensional representation of the sample space for the outcomes when you roll 2 dice. Imagine filling these entries with sums. All right, question number 1. What are the least likely possible sums or totals on the 2 dice? In this corner over here, 1 plus 1 is a measly 2. 1 plus 1 is 2. That's when you get snake eyes. Snake eyes represents the one possible way of the 36 that you can get a 2. And by the way, the corresponding probability is 1 over 36. So the probability of getting a sum of 2 is 1 over 36, because only one ELO, only one ordered pair out of the 36, namely the ELO corresponding to snake eyes, 1 and 1, will lead to a sum of 2. So the probability is 1 over 36. Similarly, over here, boxcars, that's the only ELO that leads to a sum of 12, 6 plus 6. So the 2 and the 12 are both least likely. The probability that you get a sum of 2 is 1 over 36. Also, the probability that you get a sum of 12 is 1 over 36. So 2 and 12 are the least likely possible sums for the 2 dice. They both have probability 1 over 36, corresponding to these 2 corner entries, these 2 corner ordered pairs. So we've answered number 1 and part of number 3. Number 2, what is the most likely total or sum on the 2 dice? Well, imagine filling out this table or grid here. what's the longest skew diagonal here? The longest skew diagonal. Well, take a look here. How can we get a 7? 6 and 1, 5 and 2, 4 and 3, 3 and 4, 2 and 5, 1 and 6. This is the longest skew diagonal going from lower left to upper right. How many 7s do we have along here? We have 6 of them. So the probability that you get a sum of 7 is 6 over 36, also known as 1/6. And by the way, what's a more clever way of figuring that out? And I'll give you a hint. It's similar to the analysis of doubles. Remember that the probability of getting doubles was also 1 over 36. The reasoning here is similar. What's the reasoning? Well, think of it this way. Like in the doubles example, right? What was the probability of getting doubles? It was 1 out of 6. Why? Because regardless of how the red die turned up, there's exactly one way for the green die to match it. If the red die came up a 3, there's a 1 in 6 chance that the green die also came up a 3. If the red die came up a 4, there was a 1 in 6 chance that the green die also came up a 4. Okay, 1 in 6. So regardless of the result on the red die, there was a 1 in 6 chance that the green die could match it. Well, similarly, what if the red die came up a 1? What's the only way that the green die could come up so that you get a sum that was 7? So you're aiming for a sum of 7. If the red die comes up a 1, what do you need on the green die? You need a 6. Likewise, if the red die comes up a 2, what does the green die have to come up as? A 5. If you get a 3 on red, you need a 4 on green. 4 on red, 3 on green. 5 on red, 2 on green. 6 on red, 1 on green. So regardless of how the red die turns up, there's exactly one way for the green die to turn up that will give you a sum of 7. It's really a one die problem, just like with doubles. With doubles, you're asking for the probability of a match. In the sum of 7 case, or sum equals 7 case, you're asking, well, what's the probability that you get a result on the green die such that when you add it to the result on the red die, you get a 7? Well, again, there's a 1-to-1 matching here. Regardless of how the red die turns out, there's exactly 1 out of the 6 results on the green die that will get you a sum of 7. So by a similar analysis, the probability is 1 out of 6. For doubles, it was 1 out of 6. For a sum of 7, it's 1 out of 6. It's the skew diagonal this time. So this is like the doubles diagonal here. This is like the sum of 7 diagonal. Regardless of how the red die turns out, there is exactly one result on the green die that will get you what you want. All right. What about the probability that the sum is 5? I don't have such a cute way of showing that, but what's the probability that you get a sum that's 5? Imagine filling out some of these sums here. Well, think about the various ways to get a 5. How can you get a 5? How can you get a 5? Erase these over here. Well, you can get a 4 and a 1. Also a 1 and a 4, because the order matters. A 3 and a 2. And also a 2 and a 3. There are 4 ways of getting a 5. Some students may have started with the snake eyes case over here, the sum is 2, and then get the other skew diagonals. Here's how you get a 3, here's how you get a 4, and, well, here's how you get a 5. There are 4 ways to get a 5. 4 over 36 is 1 over 9, or about 11.1%. Again, I do not expect you to reduce fractions. I'll accept this as a final answer. Again, the probability of getting a 7 is 1 out of 6. So, to answer the questions, what are the least likely possible sums or totals on the 2 dice? The least likely possible sums, 2 and 12. They both had probabilities that were 1 over 36. So 1 over 36 for the 2, 1 over 36 for the 12. What is the most likely sum or total? The answer to that was 7. The probability of that was 6 over 36, or 6 over 36, or 1/6. And there was a more logical way of thinking that through. Whatever the red die comes up as, there is exactly one way for the green die to set up a total of 7. So we've answered number 3 as well. What are their probabilities? 1 over 36, that was the minimum possible probability among these. 1 over 6, or 6 over 36, that was the maximum possible probability among these. The probability that the sum or total is 5 was 4 out of 36, or 1/9. 4 over 36, or 1/9. I can't really think of a cute way of coming up with that, except for filling out this piece of the table. All right, so we've thrown lots of dice. Let's now consider roulette.